So Governor Little has signed 227 bills into law so far this legislative session. And as of this afternoon, there are 97 bills sitting in his office waiting for some sort of action to be taken on them. One of the last to be sent to the governor on Friday was House Bill 314, the library bill. Actually, it's called the Children's School and Library Protection Act, which is meant to make libraries and schools and museums proactively restrict children's access to obscene materials. And if they don't, they could be sued for $2,500 and damages. A civil lawsuit which wouldn't cost taxpayers a dime, we're told, according to the creators of the bill, because a successful case would be paid out by the insurance company covering said library or museum. Does that mean insurance companies will have an active role in deciding what books or exhibits will be available to the public? Just one of the questions we asked of one of the writers of the bill and a 30-year librarian.
The legislation simply requires that the school or library take reasonable steps to restrict children's access, whether that's putting it behind the counter, whether that's putting it in a section where only people 18 years and over are able to go, putting flags in the database so that minors can't check it out. There's a whole host of reasonable steps that a library can take to restrict children's access that comes far short of pulling the books from the entire library.
Is it just about restricting access or just getting rid of it entirely?
No, so the legislation, and we've been totally clear with this, our goal is not to ban books.
During that same Capitol Clarity on February 16th, you said,
we want the libraries to pull this crap out of the libraries.
Yeah.
That sounds a little bit more than restricting. That sounds like getting rid of.
Well, we would love to see libraries and schools pull this junk out of the libraries.
Why?
Schools and libraries do not have a First Amendment protection to distribute pornography to anyone. And so we want to see these materials pulled, but this bill 314, House Bill 314, does not do that.
Are there obscene materials in the library?
Not by the definition of the Miller test. We carefully look at all of our materials, and while there may be some adult books that have, a 400-page book, there may be a paragraph that has some language that might offend someone. It definitely does not meet the definition of obscenity. And we believe we are already taking reasonable steps by specifically shelving the books in age-appropriate areas.
Well, if they're not obscene, then they have nothing to worry about with this legislation.
Who declares it obscene?
Ultimately, again, it's going to be up to the courts and it's going to be up to the judges.
But you're doing it right now. You're saying that's obscene.
Yeah, so based on our expertise in this area, we've identified 5 titles that we think would meet that standard for kids, and just like any other type of action that takes place in our judicial system, it's going to be up to the juries to decide.
But a lot of these books that keep popping up have to do with LGBTQ authors, stories, and perspectives.
No, not necessarily. I would disagree with that.
However, 3 of the 5 books identified on the Idaho Family Policy Center website, 3 of the 5 they searched for in local libraries were LGBTQ based. Another is a sex ed book.
What we do know is that they're not taking the books in full context, and that's the problem. When we were listening to them during the hearings in the legislature, they were saying we're not for banning books, and yet people are finding things that they personally find inappropriate or offensive, so we never know what material on the shelf at any location in the library could cause someone to bring this civil action under this. And that, just the subjective nature of what people find with this law, we just feel that we have to find a way to protect ourselves.
Protecting themselves is where insurance companies come in.
Now, here's where things get kind of cool with the way we've designed this bill. Insurance companies don't want to pay out damages. They don't want to defend their clients. And so what they will do is they will change their policies. The policies that the schools or the libraries are required to abide by if they're going to be insured by the carrier. And those policies are going to say, hey, you have to remove these books.
That sounds an awful lot like the insurance companies are going to create policies on what books are on the shelves.
And so the insurance company, to protect themselves from the liability that they would be on the hook for, would certainly create policies that the libraries and the schools would need to follow in the same way that libraries and schools need to follow other types of policies when it comes to maintaining pathways, shoveling the snow. Insurance companies are in this business of ensuring that their clients comply with the standard of care that's due.
Can you see an insurance company dictating what books are on the shelves because of liability?
I guess I wouldn't discount it completely, but it's hard to believe, and yet someone obviously thinks that that might be the case. And as I mentioned, we believe we are taking reasonable steps, and if they feel there's a step we're not taking, they need to express that to us because they haven't to this point. And so we just think there's a lot of either misinformation or miscommunication going on around this, and we would love to engage more and try to find out what it is that they're really seeking. Are they really seeking us, to completely remove the books? If so, that goes against our mission, because there are other people in the community who want those materials and in some cases need certain materials. So
Mary said after the failure of House Bill 666 last legislative session, she figured there'd be some sort of dialogue between lawmakers and librarians to kind of figure out what is needed. She told us there hasn't been since the end of last year's legislative session. The Miller test, by the way, is the three-pronged guide to determine obscenity. It has to do with community standards, find out if it's patently offensive, and if it lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, then it could be deemed offensive. Mary DeWalt, also the vice president of the Idaho Library Association, and she told us today they have definitely seen a spike in the number of books being challenged. She shared some of those numbers with us today. These numbers are representative, she said, not comprehensive, so you can see they're probably most likely underreported. But going back to 2003, when there were 0 challenges filed throughout the state, according to the Idaho Library Association, skip ahead to 2015, those numbers hovered around 2 a year. Then you pick it up in 2015, yeah, it goes from 5 to 4 to 1 to 3, then 3 again to 3. Then in 2022, it jumps to 67 books. 67 books were challenged in 2022. And of those 67 books, 38 of them, more than half, contained LGBTQ content. 16 contained people of color, and 21 didn't have any sexual content in them at all. The content contained in most local libraries already decided by a policy set by an elected board of trustees, chosen by librarians based on the community they serve. And yes, this bill could change that. Governor Little has until Thursday to decide to sign House Bill 314, to veto it, or let it become law without his signature.